Brian D. ND. Classification. NDE NDERF Experience. 33101. Experience description. As an infant and a toddler, I was raised by my atheist militant dad 97% of the time. This was mostly because my part Native American mom and Polish but American military dad had divorced when I was around 4 months old. Dad got custody of me, which is rare in court considering my age at the time. I'll save you many darker details. I'll just say that she had it pretty rough, like crazy rough growing up, and that she took things out on others closest to her, physically sometimes as an adult. I was allowed to visit every few summers or so when I became older, and I recall maybe 7 or so visits as a youth. Growing up, there was no FaceTime or internet back then, so rare phone calls and a couple of letters via snail mail every few holidays were the main sources of communication modes between us. Mom wasn't around, and she didn't care for me much. I reminded her of harder times, and she made sure to let me know it. She held many secrets tightly and really only taught me a few things that crept into my head that were good. She mostly was into selling cars and had a fun personality with customers and the neighborhood. She was very personable in public. Mom seemed happy on the outside, but I saw the darker side during my visits at home. I hold Ongoland, typical suburban life. When I was 7-ish, my still single dad was also now my soccer coach, and was doing the best he could as a single father in the mid-70s. We often practiced kicks in the courtyard of the apartments that we lived in, and we met a new neighborhood friend who liked to play soccer as well. Her name is Leanne, and she is 1 year older than I am. A nice kid, reserved, but nice enough to play soccer with and hang with. Very trustworthy. I also soon met Leanne's mother, Nancy. To me, she was magical in a new and refreshing way. She was as thoughtful as she was light and airy, always smiling and sweet to everyone, including me, and I didn't know much about that life. Yet, she was very kind and nurturing in how she treated others and how she spoke to everyone in a thoughtful, caring tone. She was very unlike how my army-trained father behaved and was a complete 180 difference from how my birth mother was. She was what many would describe as deep or new age, as she was very much into the spiritual side of life. Leanne and I eventually introduced our single parents to each other, and we all ended up hanging out pretty often, having dinners together, playing board games and going to movies, etc. a few times a month. Then, in less than a year, our parents became engaged to each other. Nancy soon became my stepmother, Leanne became my stepsister, and boom, Nancy and Dad moved us into a new townhouse and a new neighborhood. Activated. Ages 7 to 10, Nancy had attempted to show us both, Leanne and I, how to meditate during the first few years of the marriage. Leanne wasn't keen on it at all, as she was and remains super Christian religious. I liked the concept. I was honestly just way too hyper for that at our age for full meditation, although I did keep trying to meditate from time to time as I became older. She tried to show us yoga as well, but we weren't interested in that either. I didn't get it. Nah, I'm not sitting like that. You put your legs where? Why? Later on, when we were around 8 or 9 years old, Nancy did get me to go to some wakeful dreaming courses. It was maybe 12 sessions that we went to if I recall correctly, and I thought this was pretty cool. Wakeful dreaming is partially visualizing, yet a meditation of sorts, and semi-lucid dreaming, and also verbally led by a host. We were to imagine/visualize various peaceful images in a semi-meditative state in a small group setting of 7 or 8 people for a few hours at a time. From what I remember of it, it was quite fulfilling to me. I thought that we were doing something really neat. Everyone there thought that we were healing the world by sending love and healing vibes. It was lucid to me. Lucid dreaming also became a skill over time. The dream stories. I could create books. Development. At ages 10-12, Nancy always spoke of her trying to remember her past lives, and the thought of reincarnation was very intriguing to me. You would be surprised how many people have had provable incarnations. I love those talks. This topic strikes me far into my current adulthood. The whole topic of alien encounters and crop circles has become fascinating to me after reading a book she shared with me, named Communion by Whitley Strieber. By age 12, learning about karma and dharma blew my mind, and I've mainly tried to keep mine in the good dharma, the best I could even to this day. I understood it. You can kind of watch it as karma happens to people sometimes. She gifted me many Native American medicine books that allured me for weeks at a time. You can heal and prevent ailments with natural food and plants? I became fascinated with powers of the mind, like telepathy and healing, and I've been doing internal/external experiments on these topics forever. I was reaching out to spirit guides by 6th grade. I was trying to see auras while having staring contests with my pals. I've had a few astral experiences and other surprising experiments growing up. These and more were all of the books and topics I would fill my mind with around 4th and 5th grade and beyond now as an adult. These were all common topics between her and me growing up, and she loved that these things piqued my spirit's curiosity. As much as Dad and Leanne had preferred not to hear about it, Nancy kept showing me new and exciting perceptions about the universe, well into my adulthood. Preteen years did get screwed up pretty quickly. I had turned into a little hyperactive skater/rocker around 6/7/8th grade. Seriously, I had a good head on my shoulders yet. I was still naive in some ways, but I was quickly learning my street smarts. I didn't fit in well at this new school either, and I rebelled against almost everything. Think if early Bart Simpson had combined genes with a younger Ted Theodore Logan. A nice kid overall, but SMH. Anger issues have developed. Leanne, Nancy, Dad, and I weren't getting along as much as we used to anymore, and there was lots of stress in the house. There was a breakdown. Something called the stock market had crashed. I didn't know what the heck it meant back then, but both of our parents and many other kids' parents seemed quite stressed out about it for years. Our parents worked even harder, and we became what some would call latchkey kids. We Gen Xers grew up when both parents started having to work to get by. Hence we came home alone after school, to an empty house. We often cooked for ourselves or we didn't eat, as there was no DoorDash back then. We raised ourselves a bit more, and Roseanne, Judge Judy, and Marge Simpson became our TV moms. Homer, Al Bundy, and even Bill Cosby were our TV dads. Jerry Springer and MTV were our babysitters. Michael J. Fox and John Cusack were our big TV brothers. The people in the bar during the show Cheers were our extended family. Mario and Luigi were our uncles, and Pac-Man and a hedgehog were our buddies/cousins growing up. This was the new way for us, and there was a breakdown of the family dynamic. Things changed, as they do. Nancy did try to keep our relationship open, but it had dwindled quite a bit. I'll skip details for another story, but things were not perfect amongst the four of us in suburbia. At 12 to 15, I was getting into physical fights at school, and I tried to vent my frustrations productively on the wrestling team and gymnastics in middle and high school. I was removed from the both of them in high school as my grades went down rapidly as a sophomore. I stopped skating and picked up a little percussion and guitar instead, and I leaned hard into rock/metal music. Fast forward on to age 17, junior year. The arguing and general negative vibe of the house had sucked so much life out of me. I had to get out and rarely came home. Only Nancy and I barely were in touch anymore. Dad and I were not talking. Leanne and I saw each other rarely, in the halls at school. I was now living in my buddy's basement and was paying $400 a month, working at a grocery store nearby, and started doing night shift while also still trying to make it in high school. I wasn't sleeping much those days. I had only halfway lost my spiritual way by then, as I tried to keep learning, honing, and reading new things when I found the time. I did continue with a few of my experiments, but I didn't speak about these things to many friends anymore. Teen life had quickly become more about working, making money, school, playing guitar, rap, rock/metal music, MTV, pretty gals, drinking at parties with friends, Beavis and Butthead, and hacky sack, not necessarily in that order. After high school, in the spring of 1993, I was now 18. I chose to go visit my birth mother again, as it had been a few years since I had last seen her. I went there for the first time as a young man. She still didn't like me very much, but she tolerated my visit, as she told me that we needed to talk. During this visit, she nicely let me know that the man who raised me was not my actual birth father. She asked me to follow her and pulled some photo albums from a bottom drawer. She showed me a few old albums and handed me one. As we flipped the pages, there was a guy that looked a lot like me, much more than the man that raised me. In fact, I pointed to the picture and asked, "Who is that?" She said, "Ahaha, you found him. That's him, that's..." "He's your real dad," and went on to explain. I stared and didn't even question it because it was like seeing an older version of me. I went numb, and things quickly crumbled around me. I went into a depression/destruction mode for quite a few months. I remember having so much more teenage angst than I already had inside of me. After high school, too many of my friends around me started doing things that I just wasn't into. I tried a few things, but nothing that most would consider hardcore appealed to me ever. My teen friends were basically good people, but many had just started making really bad decisions. I still understood my karma, and I still had a different moral compass. Deep inside, I knew I needed to make a move. I had a gut feeling, this urge to just go somewhere else far. My girlfriend had talked me into going with her and another female friend who had 2 tickets to a Grateful Dead on June 19, 1993. As a hard rock/metalhead at the time, I wasn't thrilled about the band, but I went anyways. It had also just started raining profusely, so I decided that I needed to find shelter. I followed the sound of some kind of a pulse coming from across the parking lot. It was coming from a large camping tent, about 6 rows away. I loved what I heard coming from this tent, and it seemed as though it called to me, like it beckoned to my soul. Go in there, something told me. I could hear hand drums, a guitar, tambourines, and even one of those flute/recorder thingies was being played. I ran towards it and yelled into the tent, "Hey, you guys got some more room in there for only one more? It's getting wet out here. I can play hand drums too." They unzipped the big tent flaps and they welcomed me in, like a brother. There were 7 stoner/hippies around my age, sitting on beanbag chairs and folding stools inside this clouded tent. They said they had been falling into the same 3 beats for days and that they needed something new to drum to, and for me to start a new beat. I was a metalhead and didn't quite fit the hippie scene there, but they liked my style and my new sound. I started with a cool rhythm from the first seconds of a rap/metal song I knew quite well named "I'm the Man." This jam turned into a 3-hour session, and it was lit. I loved it, they loved it, and we were having a blast. We didn't even realize that we were soon encircled by hundreds of hippies that were now walking out of the show as it led out, directly to us. The rain had also finished its course. Medicine people, Hare Krishna, and more at 18. It really humbled me again, and gave me new insight to the world directly from the sources I aspired to learn from. It changed me and opened my eyes far more than I could have ever hoped for. 2 vows of silence, fasting for a few days at a time, a few healing ceremonies, receiving readings from real readers, and more, were all imprinted on my spirit again. The angry, fighting teen I once became was now evolving into a better man with a newer, fresh perspective. I have so many cool stories to tell about those few months. Mostly everyone out there was so very helpful and quite kind. For the most part, I had learned a lot about myself and my medicine, and I was able to get back on track for a few years. It was good for me to get fully removed from my old town and explore. It truly changed me for the better. I'll skip my 20s and 30s for another story. How I got lost again. Flash into my early 40s. I was married now for over 10 years to a pretty cool hippie chick, but I was trapped by the office doing the work machine grind. I decided that sales was now what I was best at. I still loved talking to people and connecting with them, and I was enjoying that I was cheering people up and getting paid for it. I was mostly at a computer 10 hours a day at work, usually bringing work home with me as well. With the money and machine grind focus, it all came with a few consequences. I had lost my spiritual way quite a bit again, and I had also gained quite a bit of weight from the 155 pounds that I once was in my teens and 20s. Pizza, burgers, tacos, bacon, and donuts were my main food groups at my day job, and I was rarely working out. I was slamming at least 32 ounces of coffee and or Mountain Dews by day, and also chugging at least 1 to 3 Red Bulls a night, just to stay awake. I also was moonlighting and working as a door guy/security guard at a local pool hall/bar/music venue on weeknights and some weekends, so my sleep schedule was messed up. I was smoking about 2 packs of cigarettes a day. The peak weight that I recall, I got up to well over 240 pounds. The last I had looked, but I stopped even looking at a scale for a few years. I was yuck. I had almost zero touch with nature, and everything about my lifestyle at this time, looking back, was just you. At 40, I decided to cut back on eating as much junk, and finally I was back down to under 200 pounds. When I had the stroke, it was just not enough weight loss to fix things internally, it seems, as I was developing blood clots and I didn't know it. My mental health was also at its brink due to a complete life change coming up. We were moving to TX from Chicagoland for work next week. The stress was unbearable. I was at a high-pressure day job with a quota that went up again, and a payroll change that cut my pay by 20%. This just after committing to this big move to Texas? All of this, combined with a very screwed-up work environment sprinkled with a few hundred varying toxic veterans from every branch possible. Add a few large cups of an unhealthy 12-year relationship/marriage to a mostly functional alcoholic, all pushed me into a recipe for hell. Physically, mentally, and admittedly spiritually, I was toast. All of the obvious ingredients for a severe stroke or widowmaker heart attack were right there in my face and in my arteries. Now let's finally get to the main event. Walk with me down stroke lane. Stroke day. On July 9th, 18, I was chomping down on an X-large, chicken, bacon, onion, and barbecue pizza while chugging on my 2-liter bottle of Sierra Mist. Halfway through eating, a sharp pain hit me in the lower right side under my ribs. I was getting increasingly lightheaded and dizzy, and breathing was getting more laborious by the minute. After an hour or so, I asked my now ex-wife to take me to the hospital now. Reluctantly, she did while laughing it off as indigestion. I got out of the car and walked inside the hospital as she drove off. She left me at the emergency room entrance, gasping for breath. I was now alone and scared. Something big isn't coming. It is here. I knew that I needed some serious assistance. I staggered into the hospital, and at this point, the tunnel vision was so bad that I could hardly see 4 feet in front of me. I could hear my heartbeat, intensely thundering within my eardrums, and the whole world was fading away quickly. I had to focus very hard to walk, see, and think. I had crazy tinnitus, my vision was like looking through a paper towel tube, and my legs felt as if I was walking in thick mud. This felt way worse than passing out. I was so very weak. Elle glanced to my left. I knew that I had no time to fill out any paperwork at the main intake desk. To my right, I noticed a male nurse pushing a gurney bed on wheels, obviously too busy for me. But that is what I need, right now, a hospital bed and a nurse. All I could muster myself to do was lift my left hand, slightly point to him, and say what I thought was, "Help!" Yet my mouth only uttered some gibberish that came out sounding like, "Beautimuff," as my body collapsed onto the floor. At that moment, I felt what I could only describe as a rip or tear maybe. I felt like my whole body had been greatly shaken, and also almost electrified in that instant. I felt forcefully pulled from my body, much like how Dr. Strange's soul was punched from his body in his movie, if you've seen that. I saw my soul self leave my physical self. I was now watching the back of my head, and then my body, fall forward and hit the floor as I looked down at myself, but without any eyes. The sound happening at this moment was so odd, almost like a sheet of Velcro being ripped slowly from itself in about 8 seconds, yet it also had a pulsating, very strong, low, intense grinding, vibrational type of sound. I found a really close sample of what I remember it sounded like here, https://youtube.com//ugkx1u_dp. From there, the male nurse that I was trying to seek help from came to my body's aid and started trying to revive me. I could see everything happening around me in spherical 360-degree vision. I realized that I was astral, but like never before. I had been astral a couple of times before this as a youth, but this was quite a bit different. I realized that the normal cord thing that attaches your physical body to your astral body was not there anymore. My mind, without a brain or body, was racing 1,000 thoughts in these first few moments. I felt panic, regret, and then more panic enveloped me. I thought, "Oh no, I'm dead." I felt like I said it aloud, but I had no mouth to do so. How can I see with no eyes? I thought, I'm all energy now, where are my hands, and how am I now interpreting the spectrum of light with my consciousness, and not my brain or eyes? How can I hear with no ears? How am I interpreting vibration into sound with my light body/soul body somehow? I cannot actually hear the nurses talking. Yet I can feel them speaking right where my chest used to be. I can feel every vibration in this area. I feel the molecular consistency of everything if I focused enough on it. I can sense the hard coolness of metal and the looser pores in things that were plastic. I know the very consistency of the nurses and these other people's clothes. What? I also quickly understood something that reaches into the far crevices of who and what I am as a spirit. I immediately knew that I had been in this form many times before. I knew that the Brian body was just temporary and that, in this form, I was the real me. This feeling, or knowing, was stronger than having any déjà vu feeling than I've ever had before this. There was this strong, knowing feeling happening at this point. I started thinking, I need to go back. I need to finish my mission on Earth as Brian. Wait, what is my mission exactly? I tried to recall, to no avail. I hadn't ever remembered any sort of mission in Brian form, but quickly the desire to finish some sort of incomplete mission was becoming extremely important to me as a spirit. I was so saddened and distraught by this thought. I still yearn to know to this day, why can't I remember the details of my important mission? Panic ensued for only a few more seconds as I watched the nurse and others pick up my body, put my meat shell onto the rolling bed, and get started working on me from above. Everything then changed yet again. The intense worries and fears of dying and not being in my body, along with my incomplete mission, were subsiding as quickly as they came. I can only describe at this point as the most loving, familiar energy washed over me, completely realigned my attention. It was stronger and better than a warm embrace from a grandmother as she reads you your favorite story while you eat freshly homemade cookies and pet a puppy. I instantly calmed down, and I felt so very, very loved. Where is this coming from? I thought to myself, almost scanning the room for an answer. There is now an obvious entity directly to my right, another brighter spirit, and it is smiling at me like an old friend that I have not seen in ages. Although I didn't fully recognize it as you would know the face of an old friend. I feel now like it had been there this whole time that I was out of my body, but I hadn't noticed it until right then. Something in me felt that it had possibly been at my side for my whole 43 years as Brian. I know this entity somehow. After some investigating in my memories, it was a combination of things, maybe my higher self, an ancestor, partially my guardian angel, and also God/higher power, all wrapped into one, yet only a fraction of each. Sorry that it is so hard to explain. Looking at it with my non-existent eyes, I can see rays of gold light emanating from it. Its light body was stronger, cleaner, and much brighter than my light as a spirit body at the time. It spoke to me telepathically, because I had no ears to hear it with. The voice soothingly boomed into my mind/consciousness/spirit and told me, "You're okay. You have some time. Everything will be okay. You will be fine. You have some time. Let's go for a walk and chat." My panic completely subsided and the warmth and love took over and enveloped me. I know this entity. I've known this entity for eons. It was smiling, yet it was a light body and mainly featureless. As we walked, we went into what I can only describe as a room that closely resembled the same room that Neo and Morpheus were in a few times. It was a very bright white/gold room. It replied, "Also yes, of course. Great question. I was now getting it. You are also Krishna, Jah, and Allah, aren't you?" It replied, "And more. Ha! You are remembering quickly this time," smiling even more playfully. It all clicked for me right then. Something opened inside of me and I had another set of epiphanies in these mere moments. I knew then that there is a reason that I, in this lifetime, became an omnist. I have taken my time to try and understand as many beliefs as I can in my time on Earth thus far, for a reason. This is why I am seeing the entity as all of the above. We had been here in this realm/dimension/plane hundreds of thousands of times. Also, I now feel that I now know that we choose not to remember these things in a human form, as not to have any advantage over all others while in meat/body form. I felt that it's as part of some of our destinies, to realize this as we ascend a spiritual path in human form. Every question about almost every notable moment in my life I questioned, and received answers. Had I made the right decisions in life? Was I a good person? Things that I thought I had learned, I was corrected on. Paragraphs of questions emanated from me, and as fast as I could ask, I was being answered or even downloaded the answers. I'm pretty sure that this was the whole life flashing before your eyes moment that others have spoken of during these occasions. I was so focused on the learning part that I do not recall seeing the original guide anymore. I remembered this place, this realm, and this light body. This is my home. This is where I originate from. This is where we all come from. Being in human form is just a short, temporary thing in the span of time. I had many flashes come to me. I remembered that I've lived many lifetimes before, as I flashed through a bunch of them and recalled events, as well as the highs and lows within them. I knew that I had had many successes with other missions prior, in other forms as well. I was also slightly saddened, as I also remembered that I also had a few incomplete missions throughout time. I knew I was supposed to be learning to heal in this lifetime. I am in the Brian meat suit only right in this fraction of time now, and his job is to raise other people's vibrations in such a dark time. I'm here to help people heal, somehow. I remember that I can absorb negative energy for the good. I remember that as a light body in this portion of the experience that I was in school for a time. I was learning at such a crazy pace. Almost anything that I asked was being answered. Is this the Akashic Records? The thought crossed my mind. I remember flashes of being side by side at a desk with other spirit bodies that were also students. I remember being shown books, and I remember halls with long file cabinets full of history and subjects beyond comprehension. It felt like it was mere Earth moments, yet it also felt like weeks in this realm. The worst part for me is that I cannot remember all of these school details now that I'm back in my body. What do I need to do when I get back into my body? For example, as fast as lightning, sentences in the form of answers filled my soul. Water, aspirin, and citrus peels. What? I thought, okay, what do I need to do to maintain my body when I get back to it to stay alive? It told me, fasting, cut refined sugars, eat more fruit, no more soda, parasite cleanses, coconut oil, and more. I soon also relearned/remembered that the plane/frequency that I was currently on is not the only one. Another knowing set in, even deeper than before. I had learned that each plane has its own frequency, and I knew how somehow to navigate here. I can navigate in between some of them for now as a spirit. The knowing was growing inside of me. I realized I could increase my bandwidth even more somehow. What I mean is that I can ask many more questions at the same time as opposed to one at a time, and I did. The spirit brain that was asking all of the questions was now downloading at a megaterabytes pace as opposed to the single questions at the megabyte pace I started at. I was able to alter my focus and continue the questions yet in a more subconscious sort of way. I didn't have to think, it was just happening like your heart beating, it just happens. Naturally. I was now able to direct my attention to that new, higher plane. I instinctively knew now how to raise my vibration a bit more here. I knew there was something more that I had forgotten as my human form. I then chose to periscope through up to the next plane. I say periscope because I went up and broke through to a new layer above to a new frequency. I was in another very familiar place. I could see much further, and everything was quite a bit brighter. There were far more colors, even ones I had never seen as Brian. I could hear my guide say, Good, you are remembering what you are. And you relearning quickly. Good job, buddy. Keep going. It cheered me on. Although I could no longer see it, I knew my guide could still see me, or at the very least we were attached still somehow. This is where things got super intense. It's hard to put into words, but here goes. In this vibration/plane/frequency, I could see every single soul that was in between life and death, all at once, and I could hear the human souls on Earth that were dying or had just died. Some were even in comas, and even a few were stuck in between and they didn't realize they were dead or dying. I could feel their vibrations, and I could hear their cries for guidance to their guides/God/even Mother Mary. How did I know how to see and hear them? I thought to myself, I wanted to know more. I remember a truck coming at me. Where am I? I could hear an Irish middle-aged man say in a panic. Where is my wife Laura? Honey, where are you? Laura, are you here? I heard an old man's raspy, desperate voice, almost crying and quite scared. I remember swimming in the lake and my foot got stuck in the mud. What is this place? Where is my family? A terrified young Asian girl said, in an accent. I shouldn't have taken all of those pills, but the pain was so hard to handle. I'm so sad, said a teenage Midwestern boy. I heard the anguish in his cries. Mommy? Daddy? Where am I? Can you hear me? Where did you go? I remember a crash and blood and, said a small girl's voice no older than 5. She was desperate for consolation. These are the ones that come to my mind's surface, but I was hearing thousands of cries for help come over me. Every age, sex, nationality, and accent you can imagine was flooding to me. It seemed like more than thousands. I can feel them. I can see them. I can hear them all. My first thought was, where are all of these people's guides like I had met mine when I came here? And then as I asked, an answer came to me from my guide. Look up, the thought said, and I did. Above me, on this newer plane, were much larger entities than the guide I had met upon coming here. These beings were almost angelic, but also of the same light as mine and my guide's light. We were all connected by the same light, all emanating this same loving light, all encompassed by this loving, wise, warm, vibrational light that each one of us has inside us. Yet, these beings were more advanced, more pure, it seemed, a bit brighter, a bit wiser, a bit older too. They were the ones communicating to the poor people in between that I just spoke about, and they were frantically and yet calmly answering the questions of all of these individuals that were in the in-between the best that they could. You could sense they were compassionate and doing their best, yet you could tell they were struggling and could use some help as if they were shorthanded. They were calming the in-between people down, answering their cries, reassuring them, sending them love and light, good vibes, caring for them, and assisting their souls for the next mission, or even giving them a chance to go back if needed. I feel that being an omnist, I could see them in their true form and understand how religious people of different faiths would see them as angels. In a sense they are, yet they are also not the typical description to me. In fact, to me, they looked like something from an Alex Gray painting. https://www.amazon.a/painting-human/dp/b01ddlyh6ui was now reeling with a flood of memories. My spirit said, I know this place too. I used to be one of them for a time. I remember. I chose to be Brian this time. I used to be one of these helpers/guides. And just as that thought crossed my mind, one of the giant entities made eye contact with me. I immediately felt paranoid, like I was wandering around a closed mall and got caught trespassing by security. I quickly felt like, I'm not supposed to be here, am I? But such was not the case. This new first entity glared at me, surprised, but not mad at all. Actually sort of elated, also like an old friend that I had not seen in a while. It smiled at me and stopped counseling the in-between airs that it was helping. It pointed at me, much like an old close friend would from across a dance floor. It stated, Bro, what the heck are you doing here right now? It's not your time yet. I replied, I know. Can you help me get back to my mission as Brian? I replied, in a slightly panicked, yet telepathic tone. Immediately entity number 1 nudged the entity number 2 next to it, like literally elbowed him in the light body ribs, and it said, Hey, look who it is. It's our old buddy. It said a name that was not Brian. It is not repeatable in English, not translatable nor utterable, but it captured my entire spiritual existence, and I knew it meant me. This number 2 entity was very busy helping people in the in-between as well, and was picking up this first one's slack, because number 1 had paused to talk to me. This second entity also felt like an old friend, and it also knew me immediately. It was showing me a look of shock on its face when it saw me. It said, Oh no, not now. Now is not your time. You have too much to do. It also knew I had a mission. I know. I somehow agreed. I need to go back and do what I was supposed to do. Can you guys help an old friend out? I need to get back into my Brian body. They could tell I was serious and that I needed help immediately. The number 2 entity paused for a moment as if having an epiphany. He replies, You need to go back down there and wake up all of the others that you can. There are so many sleeping warriors down there already. They are a lot like you. There are many more already down there that can help you and us. You need to go back and turn this all around as soon as possible." And I agreed wholeheartedly, knowing what it meant by that statement. The number 2 entity suddenly reappeared, and he had what I would describe as something a little bigger than the size of a bowling ball, made of an intense violet, red, and white light. It was a fiery swirl of powerful energy. It said to me, "You told me to give this to you if you ever came back here too soon. You knew this was going to happen. You planned it." He threw this ball at me, fast and hard. I tried to catch it, but I had no arms in the spirit realm, yet I felt it hit my soul right in the spirit chest. And that is the moment I opened my actual eyes as Brian again. The male nurse that I had last seen as I had my stroke was rubbing his knuckles on my sternum. "Hey there, buddy. Do you know your name?" In my head, I repeated what entity number 1 had called me in the other realm, my soul's name, but my mouth said, "Brian D." Then he asked, "Do you know where you are?" I replied, "I better be in a hospital, sir. I feel awful." He laughed and said, Good, you can talk. Good news and bad news, Brian. You just had a stroke, but you were in the right place. We gave you a blood thinner and broke up the big clot. The bad news is that there are now 3 smaller clots. One is going to your heart, one to your brain, and the other one to your lungs. They are prepping the operating room right now. He had a big syringe in his hand and said, "This is the knockout juice. We are about to crack open your ribs and catch that clot before it gets to your heart, and you die of a heart attack." In an instant, I remembered a few chapters of what I had learned with my questions in the spirit realm. I put my hand on his as he slid the needle of the knockout juice into my IV line, thumb on the plunger. I sternly said, "No, do not give me that shot. I refuse. I know what I need to do. Take me to a private room immediately. I need a lot of water. I need a few aspirin, and all of the citrus fruit that you can bring me." His pupils dilated like someone who just got surprised/scared. His hand was in mine and it started shaking uncontrollably. I could see the hairs on his arms stand up straight. He looked at me bug-eyed and startled, and said in a shaky voice, "I don't know why, but I believe you." "Okay, buddy. Are you sure?" I said, "Yes, 100%. We have no time to waste. Please help me. I'll sign whatever you need. Just get me those 3 things." I was wheeled to a private room, and within a few minutes, I was surrounded by doctors and nurses, and some lady in a business pantsuit making me sign responsibility release paperwork. The male nurse arrived again, now clearly out of breath, and brought me 2 pitchers of water for aspirin and a bowl of oranges and grapefruits, also a lemon and 2 limes. I crushed the aspirin with the pitcher right on the bed tray in front of me. I sprinkled the crushed aspirin with my hand into the water, sloshed it around, and chugged 80% of the water. I got to peeling the citrus fruits, but I didn't eat the fruit. I woke up with an odd urge to eat citrus peels, lime, lemon, grapefruit, chewing them even though it was harsh and gross. Within minutes, doctors and nurses surrounded me as my heart monitor flatlined. They had the defib machine ready when I instinctively started coughing. I felt a squish pop in my chest, as if a clot entered my heart, then another pop squish as it left. My heart restarted, leaving the staff stunned. When the surgeon asked how I knew what to do, I told him I had just learned it from somewhere. Maybe God. 3 days later, I left the hospital with only minor side effects. I followed my instincts with cleansing remedies and diet, and against medical advice, moved to Texas soon after. Since then, my senses feel heightened. I know things, avoid danger, crave sunlight and grounding, and repel negativity. Karma seems to strike those who wrong me. My circle has grown small, but I feel called to help heal and awaken others. I believe we all have a mission, pieces of a larger puzzle. I share this hoping to connect with like-minded souls who understand these experiences.